Hi everyone, and welcome back to 7 Days Inside EMDR. I'm Kyle Lincoln, a counselor here in Salem, Massachusetts.
Hi, and I am Kellyn. Welcome back.
So before we dive in today, I want to take a moment to be really clear about who this series is for and our goal for these 7 episodes. We've designed this podcast specifically for those who are exploring around the edges of EMDR and also those who might be ankle deep in it in the early phases of treatment, what counselors might call phase 1 and 2.
So this is really meant to act as a guide to help people feel ready for reprocessing trauma in phase 3 and on.
Yeah, exactly. And our hope here is to help prepare you for the deeper work of memory reprocessing by giving you a solid foundation in EMDR, which can be a little intimidating up front, not to mention expensive unless you have great insurance. To do that, every episode in this series will follow the same 3-part structure. First, we'll explore a general topic to build your understanding. Second, we'll define one essential EMDR word or idea to demystify the language of the therapy. And third, we'll guide you through a practical resourcing exercise that you can use in your daily life.
So topic, essential idea, and exercise. Got it. So how does that apply to today's episode on trauma?
Well, today our topic is understanding the fundamental nature of trauma. Our essential idea is a memory network, which is key to how EMDR works. And our practice exercise will be a calming technique called diaphragmatic breathing.
Perfect. Let's begin.
All right, Kellyn. In our first episode, we introduced the what of EMDR. Today, we need to lay a critical foundation for everything that comes next. We're going to establish a framework for understanding the very nature of trauma.
Right, and that's definitely an essential part of this entire series. Because before we can talk about a solution like EMDR, we have to have a really clear and compassionate understanding of the problem itself. So actually, while we were preparing for this recording, you shared some of your old writings on trauma. And the way you structured it felt really helpful. It was around a couple of key questions. I think that would be a great framework for us today.
Yeah, perfect. So where should we start?
All right, let's start with the most fundamental question. How does trauma occur?
I know this probably sounds obvious, but no one is born with trauma. It's like an injury to our brains, and an injury to our sense of safety and well-being in the world. It goes deeper than just, something bad happened. Trauma occurs when we face a situation that we are powerless to control and completely unprepared to handle. It's that combination of a distressing event plus a state of profound vulnerability that seems to create an injury so profound to come under the description of trauma. One way I like to describe this is soldiers at war. They don't develop trauma on day one. They develop trauma after they've been in combat for so long and they're tired and fatigued. And that's when they're most vulnerable. It's not just that a bad thing happens. It's more that their bodies can't cope with it because they are so tired and fatigued to the point where something is bound to break.
So the helplessness is as much part of the trauma as the actual event itself.
Yeah, it's the critical ingredient. I use an analogy for this. Imagine our personal resilience is like a sheet of ice. And a challenging event is like a stone that comes into contact with that ice. And trauma, it appears to hit at a time when we don't feel the control or preparation or competency needed to defend ourselves. So trauma, like a stone to ice, seems to cause a break of sorts. Conceivably thin ice is more easily shattered than thick ice. Big stones cause more damage. At certain times in our lives, especially in childhood, our ice is naturally thinner. An experience like abuse or severe neglect is a very heavy stone. And for that child, the ice usually shatters. Trauma happens. That shattering moment where the weight of the experience overwhelms our capacity to cope is where trauma is born.
I've actually never heard of this analogy for trauma, but that creates such a clear image in my head. So thank you for sharing that. And this actually perfectly sets up the next question I wanted to ask from your writing is, when that ice shatters, what exactly becomes broken? Like what happens to us?
This is a really good question, and actually, I'm not sure that there is a very straightforward answer. You can say neurologically speaking, that the memories that we have create some sort of damage. But it gets a little more complicated than that. I mean, sometimes trauma stems from a single event. Sometimes it is more of a chronic thing we experience. But it does create memories that, in a sense, when we re-experience, are wounding, right? They can haunt us with flashbacks and nightmares. And reliving or re-experiencing these memories in this trauma keeps us in a state of alert, a state of mind that is understood to be linked with the overproduction of stress hormones and adrenaline. And over time, it's believed that this excessive hormone production, this constant fight or flight response, actually rewires our brain's circuitry, and it makes us more fragile and more sensitive to triggers. I would say at the most profound level, what can fracture is not just our neurobiology, but our cohesive sense of self. I mean, I've worked with clients who, in recalling a memory, would dissociate entirely. Their consciousness would just switch off. I mean, maybe that's an extreme example. I don't think it is, but it illustrates that trauma can disrupt our very being.
And for people who don't have a reaction as dramatic as what you just explained, what would be broken for them?
I mean, perhaps their relationship with their own memory and with time itself. The experience doesn't become a normal memory that you can just recall. It becomes a wounding memory. It stays active in the nervous system, intruding into the present in waves of emotion. I mean, in that sense, what's broken is the boundary between the past and the present. The trauma essentially cedes control of your present life over to the unprocessed remnants of the past.
So you're saying the brain itself is basically altered.
Exactly. Your survival system, so that fight, flight, or freeze response, it gets locked in on an on position. Your brain circuitry is rewired for a state of constant alert. What's broken is your ability to stay safe in your own body in a world that now feels fundamentally dangerous.
When you lay it out like that, the shattering of resilience, the hijacking of memory, the rewiring of the brain for danger, that paints a really powerful picture of what trauma is. And that logically leads to the most important question of all. If all of this can be broken, can it be healed?
Yeah, that is a good question. So the one of recovery, that's what we'll be exploring the rest of this series. And I will answer that in the conclusion of this episode. But the first step to answering it is understanding how the brain organizes these wounding memories, which brings us to today's essential concept, the memory network. As a reminder, in each episode, we're highlighting one essential EMDR word or idea that helps you prepare for EMDR reprocessing. Today's essential concept is memory network. And I want to spend a little more time on this one because it is a key assumption about how and why EMDR works.
Yeah, well, that's definitely good information to know. But what do you mean by memory network? Is that like how the mind is connected or?
Well, let me pause you right there. So some of us imagine the brain like a bunch of glass orbs, like in the movie Inside Out.
Oh my goodness.
But in EMDR, we don't treat memories like isolated events, like distinct glass orbs. Instead, we think of memories as part of memory networks, webs of experience that are linked together somehow. When you start free associating ideas around middle school, chances are one memory will link to another. Maybe you were with the same people, it was the same class. Maybe in the case of difficult memories, it was the same kind of feeling of rejection or disappointment. Memories tend to link together. You know, Freud had this idea that we have a subconscious mind. I don't love most of Freud's ideas, but what is worth noting is that your brain naturally will link memories together, sometimes in ways that are unexpected or ways that connect because of emotion or body sensation. So in this way, the strands that connect memories, their networks, are deep and invisible.
That's really funny because I was totally imagining the glass orbs from Inside Out. So thank you for that clarification. All right. So like when you said middle school, my mind jumped back to a couple memories. A memory of me playing Foursquare with my friends at recess and reading The Outsiders in my English 101 class. We all did it. But so my brain connected those two things together. Is that considered a memory network?
I mean, the memories are definitely connected, probably to the network of like middle school memories or something benign like that. But in trauma work, we may be doing more than free association of positive memories. I think we might be trying to understand how painful memories are affecting us in the present. Triggers are things people experience in the present that seem to activate a whole network of unprocessed memories. Your brain is saying, we've been here before, and it's pulling not just from the current moment, but from everything else that feels emotionally similar.
Okay, so what exactly is the trauma work that you do then? Is this where EMDR comes into play?
Yeah, in EMDR, we follow a person's associations from something that is a presenting issue in their life, sometimes through the emotions they bring, sometimes through the beliefs about themselves they stir up, and we trace back earlier life experiences that brought up similar feelings or produced similar thought processes. For example, if your new role at work requires you to stand in front of everyone and do public speaking, a person may feel anxious about that. If, however, it's connected to trauma in some way, a person might think, nobody cares what I have to say, or shut up, you look stupid. Your brain probably first thought those thoughts back when you were younger and had less life experience, fewer adaptive beliefs, and fewer reasons to balance your anxiety with a little public speaking pep talk ahead of time.
So, in your example, it sounds like this person has memories that are affecting their behavior, whether they're aware of it or not. Is this a memory that a person is always aware of, or is this something in the subconscious mind that is creating that negative self-belief?
So you're asking the right sort of question. I will say, in my experience, if it is a single event trauma, the person may be aware of it. But more often than not, if the person has a dozen experiences of small t trauma, then it's likely subconscious and needs to be processed overtly through some therapy like EMDR. So imagine your memory network like a tree. There are parts you see, memories you remember, things you experience in your life now, and then there's a root system. In EMDR, to truly change your reactions in the present, you need to get down to the roots, your earliest memories, buried emotions, even beliefs you formed when you were much younger. So when clients are guided to remember these memories, we try to find what we call the touchstone memory, which is often one of the earliest and most powerful roots in the memory network system.
Okay, pause. It sounds like you're saying that entire memory networks can be sources of pathology.
Actually, that's a really perceptive observation. So, yes, in medical sciences, they call this the etiology. And you're right. The theory behind mental illness for EMDR is diseased memory networks. Why are things not working in the present? It's because of things that happened in the past that have created maladaptive ways of thinking, feeling, and being in the world. And of course, EMDR doesn't claim to treat everything. There are mental health problems that aren't caused by memories, but these aren't the ones that you would go to EMDR for help with. And here's the hope. EMDR lets us access the roots of our memory networks in a safe and guided way. We go back into the touchstone memories with new resources, new emotional processing resources, and adult understanding. And when we reprocess those experiences, something profound happens. The network begins to heal, and there's adaptive thinking that really severs the links between memories and triggers.
Alrighty, so that was a lot, but I think I understand what you're talking about when you say memory network now. So our memories are linked, sometimes in ways that we understand and recognize, and other times those links are deep in our subconscious mind. Memories connected with trauma can come out negatively in our present emotions and behavior. But EMDR therapy helps people to reprocess trauma, which ultimately means going back through the memory network, identifying the touchstone, and healing the pathways that people can live their lives less affected by triggers.
Exactly. And that's what the whole D and R of EMDR, the desensitization and reprocessing, means. It's changing how much power memories hold over your life. Desensitization and reprocessing traumatic memories gives you space to respond differently. And that's what healing looks like. So as we close today, I want to guide you through another resourcing skill from phase 2 of EMDR. This one is called diaphragmatic breathing, a structured way to breathe that helps bring your nervous system into a calm, steady state.
So this is one of the things you'd be doing before any of the memory work starts, right?
Yes. So in phase 2, we help develop skills that people can use to stay steady, not just in session, but in real life. Diaphragmatic breathing is one of those tools. We're not just looking at how someone breathes, we're teaching them to notice their breathing when they feel anxious or overwhelmed and to shift it on purpose. So when someone is in a state of hyperarousal, their heart's racing, their thoughts are spinning, their breath usually becomes fast and shallow, mostly in the chest, and that keeps the body locked in a fight or flight response. But diaphragmatic breathing helps interrupt that pattern. It activates the parasympathetic nervous system, the part of your body that helps you slow down, feel safe, and come back to the center. This is a skill you can use to change your physiological state in the moment. And the more you practice it, the more available it becomes when you need it. So let's try it together now. If you're listening and able, sit upright, scoot slightly forward in your chair, place one hand on your chest and the other on your stomach.
Okay, I'm ready.
Okay, good. So start by exhaling fully, just to clear out the breath you have. And now breathe in through your belly. Let your hand rise as you count 1, 2. Then breathe in through your chest. 1, 2. And now let's hold it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Now exhale. First through your belly to 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. And then through your chest for another 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. So that whole cycle takes about 20 seconds, which means you're only taking about 3 breaths in a full minute. And that feels surprisingly slow, but that's the point. It teaches your body how to calm itself. So let's do it again. Exhale to start, and then inhale belly. 2, inhale chest. 1, 2, and then hold. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Exhale belly. 1, 2, 3, 4. Exhale chest. 1, 2, 3, 4. And now we'll do 2 more rounds. Inhale belly. 1, 2. Inhale chest. 1, 2, and hold. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Exhale belly. 1, 2, 3, 4. Exhale chest. 1, 2, 3, 4. Whew. Okay, so you don't have to get it perfect, but if it helps, you can pause and rewind and try that again, repeating that a couple times if it helps. So now, just let your breath return to normal and notice what changed inside you. Maybe your chest feels a little lighter. Maybe your thoughts have slowed down a little bit. Maybe it was just hard to follow the instructions and you need to listen again.
Yeah, actually, I think my thoughts are so slowed down now. I might just have to leave.
Nice try.
Okay. But I guess for real, for me, doing that exercise made me feel a lot more, first of all, intentional about where my breath was going. And in that way, it's like there was more space in my body.
Huh. Well put. That's good. So that the power of breathing is real. So in a session, I might guide someone through this when they're feeling overwhelmed, or, use it at the beginning to help settle their body. If we're in session during doing EMDR resourcing, maybe we'll pair it with tapping or grounding, depending on what they need. And outside of session, I'd say this is something you can practice during the week. So take 1 or 2 minutes, maybe set an alarm, 5 minutes on your phone, and just work on trying to get that rhythm of about 3 slow breaths, full breath cycles in a minute, to help your nervous system shift.
I know for a fact that I could definitely use this practice in my everyday life. And I like knowing that it doesn't require a lot of time or energy on my part. It's a small practice, but I could feel a big change in how my body feels.
That's what the resourcing phase is all about, right? Repeatable ways that help build steadiness. And in this sense, we could say building it one breath at a time. Let's just settle into that feeling of calm for a moment. We covered some very deep and challenging material today, and I appreciate you all for staying with us through it.
I know for me, thinking about trauma as an injury, like that stone on ice analogy that you were talking about, it's so much more helpful than the vague way we probably all tend to talk about trauma. It reframes the whole conversation.
And that's a good takeaway from today. Trauma is a profound injury to our nervous system and our sense of safety in the world. It rewires our brain for danger and disrupts the boundary between past and present.
And understanding that memory network concept shows that there's a logic to how that disruption happens. It's not just chaos.
Yeah, I think understanding the logic of the injury is the first step towards understanding the logic of the treatment, EMDR. At the end of our first segment, we were left with the most important question of all. If all of this can be broken, can it be healed? And I want to end today by stating clearly that the answer is yes.
And that's what this series is all about, to give people the resources and a better understanding of EMDR as a treatment and as an option. So where do we go from here now that we have this foundation?
Now that we understand the nature of traumatic injury, we're going to explore other conditions that EMDR can treat. We'll discuss how trauma symptoms often appear as anxiety, phobias, depression, and chronic relationship issues. We'll also look at who's a good candidate for this kind of therapy.
We hope that you guys will all join us for that. And as always, we'll include links to mental health resources in our show notes.
Thanks for listening. Until next time.